Currently on entries have plummeted by over a quarter amid stricter submission rules, raising questions about the festival's revenue impact and the overall health of the creative industry. Let's head to Sydney now. We're joined by Darren Woolley from Trinity P3, which we're in currently on at the moment. Talk to us about the lower entries and what that means about quality standards.
Well, yes, Aaron, this week is the big week for the creative advertising industry. They're all in the south of France sipping rosé. But yeah, the report that a quarter of the entries had dropped off, they were down at 20,000. And this is run as a business. It's great to acknowledge great creative work, but it's still a business. It's owned by a company called Informa PLC, which is publicly listed. And you have to wonder about what the impact, the revenue will be, because these entries are costing around 700 euros up to 2,500 euros. So 7,000 less entries, let's say at 1,000 euros, that's 7 million euros straight out of the top line this year.
So what does that mean? I mean, obviously the idea is raising quality standards, is that correct?
That's right. This is all about championing great creative work that actually drives businesses. And the problem they had last year was that there were a number of very high-profile scam entries. These are entries entered by agencies on the pretense that they were actually done for clients, and often won awards, only to later be taken back because they never actually ran for the client in that form, or they were entered without the client's knowledge in some cases. So, this is the desperation some agencies have. Clearly, the owners of the award show wanted to protect their interest, so they've introduced a whole lot of fact-checking and validation processes, and that stopped people entering because they're scared of being caught out this time.
Yeah, which is, a good and a bad thing in a way. If it's impacting them financially, that could have an impact. But talk to us about Cannes. You mentioned it, but could they now recover from last year's scandal? Is that what this is all about?
Absolutely. They've taken the advice of the industry and introduced more stringent checking of the entries. And look, some people are reporting from Cannes that the quality of the work is actually better this year, because while there's less entries, the actual quality, the ideas that are being presented are actually are really of a high standard. So look, let's hope that this will help it. But I'm just wondering, if I was a shareholder of Informa, seeing the revenue drop, but maybe they'll make it up in other ways, who knows?
Yeah, well, talk to us about the stricter rules. Are they more beneficial or more harmful? Because there are now so many live events. Every business post-COVID in this space is hosting a live event. It feels like they're just happening every 5 minutes. There's high cost involved, there's high production involved. So therefore it comes down to credibility. So do the tighter rules actually help the credibility or hurt them so financially that it makes it hard to keep them going?
Absolutely, Aaron. And look, at the last count, there was over 700 creative awards run by the advertising industry around the world. And you have to say Cannes Lions is one of the top and most regarded. So last year was a real kick in the guts for them, because it really put a question mark over the quality of the judging and being able to pick scams. In this AI era, it's now possible for agencies to create film entries, for instance, that were never actually filmed, that they're created by AI, and the client may never have actually invested in putting them to air. The award is about not just doing great creative work, but creative work that actually drives clients' businesses. And so I think these new rules and new processes are definitely in place. Even though it's reduced the number of entries, it's probably reduced the entries from the people that shouldn't have been entering in the first place.
All right, let's move on, because the Nine Network is set to sever ties with veteran presenter Karl Stefanovic over his controversial promotion of right-wing activist Tommy Robinson on his podcast, raising significant concerns about the impact on the network's reputation and advertiser relationships. The Mad F Witches, well, they were definitely circling over this one, watching them on X, trying to get everyone together, trying to raise funds. They have just taken out, well, Kyle Sandilands, you can imagine, over at Ahron. Nine was looking at a headache. The way I read this one though, Darren, no matter what Nine do, they're going to really anger a large proportion of the, the market, given that a lot of the viewers of today are conservative and older and may support the views that he is saying. How does this impact the show, and what do you see happening from here?
Aaron, I think, first of all, I'm already amused by the memes that have popped up online about, this is Karl setting up his I've been cancelled tour off the back of this. The cynicism of people on the internet is just outrageous. But look, there's a whole lot of questions here. One is Karl has built over 20 years a reputation as a journalist. And I think this is a question about the journalistic profession and the changes and pressures that it's under. Because
I agree.
while on air, he was presenting himself as independent and asking the questions that need to be asked. You'd have to say that his podcast is really just a platform to chat with people that he either agrees with or thinks deserve some sort of promotion.
Well, YouTube, the trouble is that YouTube really, they don't love content that sits in the middle. They love content that enrages and gets people to comment and to like and to share. And if you say the sky is blue and the grass is green, no one's going to comment or like on that. But if you say the opposite, you'll probably get a few bits of reaction. This is really about the platforms. I mean, we've seen it with Piers Morgan in the UK. We've seen it in the US with Don Lemon, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, big names from broadcast who make their money and then set up a studio down in the basement of their house. And then they speak to their friends, they grow their audience. We've seen Karl do that. I couldn't understand why Nine allowed him to do the podcast in the first place, because obviously when your biggest, highest paid star, if he isn't, then he must be one of, decides to do a bit of a side hustle and it's on a medium which is competing with you, that's a really strange place, and it feels like it was inevitable you were going to end up here. I mean, the guy's job is to sell, cereal to soccer mums in the morning. To then move from that, you can either be commercially viable or YouTube opinionated. I can't see how you can do both.
And you're exactly right. And the mad effing witches, as you said before, they've just taken Kyle's scalp. They're now focusing on Karl, but notice that they're only focusing on what's going to air, let's say, as traditional media. Most of their attacks are on ARN, now Nine. They're looking for personalities that are.
They don't seem particularly technically savvy, by the way. Just from that tweet that I just put up there on X, it actually goes on where they ask their audience, "Can someone please find a way to download the video?" And I was like, okay, great. You do raise an interesting point, and that is that I know people who used to try and advertise on Sky, but they would get taken down by the mad witches. And so they went and advertised on Sky's YouTube channel, which actually got them the audience that they wanted, but flew under the radar of the mad witches. Interestingly as well, on the other side, the Daily Mail has this, which is there's now a petition out there, thousands of names and signatures to save Karl. Karl is also up for the Ray Martin Logie as well. And you could just imagine the groundswell of people, the Pauline Hanson supporters, the Karl supporters, our comments section on our Instagram and Facebook full of supporters for Karl saying, what is Nine doing? Could you imagine the Logie speech if he won?
But this is where I think, as you said, the difference between digital channels and traditional broadcast media is quite different, and the concerns are quite different. The focus of advertising for broadcast media is putting it in particular programs that get particular audiences and are often anchored by particular personalities. Whereas when it comes to digital, there's so many options, and I wonder, particularly for marketers, where they need to start considering what is the personality that's being projected here. Because in some ways, Karl feels like he's suffering from a split personality. This was a man that not long ago was supporting Change the Date for Australia Day and was supporting Channel 9 in their action against the Ben Roberts-Smith defamation case, and now in recent days has been supporting Australia Day and supporting Ben Roberts-Smith. So, sure, we've all got a chance to change.
And wearing cowboy boots and riding a horse, from what I saw.
Yeah, but when you are making your money from advertising, you need to be very clear about what you represent, because Advertisers do not like extremes, particularly in politics, or religion or sex, the three topics that...
Yeah, it's interesting, but they're the three topics that do really well on YouTube. And I think in this new world that we are entering, it's probably a conversation we're going to have to break it down as to what marketers and advertisers need to be doing. But Darren, we've got to leave it there. Appreciate your time and insights as always. We'll talk soon.
You're welcome.